My name is Christian Spahr. I'm the director of the media program Southeast Europe of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. The KAS is a German think tank. It's a think tank active in Germany with political education, but we have a lot of offices all over the world. Actually, it's a specific model of German foreign policy that the state gives some funds to political foundations in order to have a presence in the civil society sector, also in the connection with political parties abroad. And this is a sort of complementary element to the embassies. And the media program Southeast Europe is an initiative for quality journalism, for training of journalism, and also for improvement of political communication in the Balkans and beyond. We are covering former Yugoslavia, plus Albania, Romania, Moldova, and Bulgaria. Actually, the office is based in Bulgaria and Sofia. And I would like to talk with you in the next 5 to 10 minutes about the independence and credibility of the media in this region, also about what the digital revolution is doing with the media in the region, and the dialogue between politicians and citizens in Southeast Europe. First question, who in this room would agree with one of the following three statements? I generally trust the media, I trust some of the media, I generally mistrust the media. Okay, who would agree to the first statement? I generally trust media. Two people, okay. I trust some of the media. Okay, this is the majority. I generally distrust media. Who is in for that? Nobody. That's a good sign, I guess. And the answer shows that trust is not easy to earn, and this is something we all know. Before we take a closer look at the situation in Southeast Europe, let me remind the current situation, like the global situation. Many things make our modern reality very complex. The political changes, the globalization, international crisis, and also the changes in terms of consequences of the digitalization. And a lot of new questions arise, like can we still trust our traditional political allies, if we think about Trump in the US, for instance? For the people here in the region, for instance, will global exchange open new perspectives for daily life of people? Will people benefit from technologies, or will they face unknown risks? And due to the historical and current experiences, the citizens in Southeast Europe in many cases don't have a lot of confidence in their elites and political leaders to answer these questions properly. And this lack of trust, of competency, also goes for the media. We have done a couple of surveys in Bulgaria and in Romania, and actually the trust in media and political communication equally is very, very low. I will also present these figures more in detail later in the workshop, but in Bulgaria less than 10% of the citizens trust in the independence of professional media. And in Romania, we have asked this question 2 years before. It was 28%, but still it's by far not a majority of citizens. And if we ask the same question about political communication, then it's also a very low figure, like 7, 8 or 10% of citizens who believe that political leaders are informing them in a proper way about the decisions they take. And so we live in low trust societies, basically, and also the view of journalists on their own profession is sometimes very critical. Every third journalist in Bulgaria says that they can't write about certain issues. For instance, about certain politicians, about certain companies, about certain topics. So there is definitely quite a high level of auto-censorship within the media companies. And you all know that it's difficult to change this situation. We have dysfunctional markets in a country like Bulgaria. We have more media titles than in Germany compared to the relative to the size of the country. And of course they cannot survive all in these small markets, and especially when people are not willing to pay for quality journalism, and especially when there is a high political influence. And in this situation, of course, it doesn't help to share some drinks with the oligarchs to convince them about ethical standards. Aidan, we could drink a bottle of whiskey with some Bulgarian oligarchs. I think it would not help a lot to convince them about our understanding of independent journalism. So other instruments are needed in this regard. And I believe that one key instrument is the fostering of investigative journalism. This is very important because it helps to create transparency when there is no transparency given from politicians by their own initiative. Then we need, of course, investigative journalists to shed a light on certain things that are hidden. And for us in the media program, this instrument can be, for instance, the Bern Summer School for Investigative Journalism. Bern is a regional NGO. We are working with them on this summer school. And this experience showed us that the networking of journalists beyond national borders is a key also to advance the profession. Because it's not only about learning the latest research techniques or how to scrape Facebook for unknown details, but it's these regional and international cooperations that make, for instance, projects like the Panama Papers possible. Some investigative journalists from Southeast Europe have played a role in this, and actually this community of investigative journalists in the region is very active. And one trend that is actually positive, in my opinion, is that all over Southeast Europe, independent initiatives of journalists are emerging, not only classic NGOs, but investigative newsrooms with a new funding concept financed by donors like the EU and American organizations. Some also have positive experiences with crowdfunding, although I have to admit that it's still difficult in this region because it's difficult to convince people to pay for journalism. But this is something relevant, and I think these alternative journalistic projects, they still need funding from outside, and this is also a responsibility from the European Union and from others. And I think some of the approaches to support new media and freelancers is funding investigative journalism, funding training in investigative journalism, but also funding training in entrepreneurial journalism. This is something we have been doing as well, like publishing a handbook in entrepreneurial journalism, because when we talk to young journalists, young colleagues who just finished university or had their first job in the media, they say that the traditional media companies are not very attractive for them, and they are, because let's say they cannot realize their own values, their own aims in traditional environments, and they are looking how to make their own project on the internet, how to become self-employed. And this is not only learning how to write for the internet, but also learning how to create a business model, how to find allies, how to create a funding concept, etc. And I believe there is also some future in this. Another aspect that is also quite important for us is to improve the political communication, to spread the understanding that political communication should not be propaganda, but a true dialogue with the citizens. And I know it's often very difficult to convince the highest political leaders, because some of them think, I don't need a spokesperson managing my communication because I know how my citizens feel, and I have the 10 telephone numbers of the most important journalists in my smartphone, and if I have to say something, I can call them. But actually, in many countries of Southeast Europe, there are modern thinking communication professionals who want to change this situation and who want to establish a real dialogue with the citizen, taking citizens not only as a target audience, but also talking with them, taking their input, developing communication projects that, for instance, include citizens in policy making, asking citizens for feedback about government decisions, etc. And these projects we are discussing on a platform that is called CCOM. This is an acronym for Southeast Europe Public Sector Communication Association. So it's basically the first professional association in Europe for government spokespersons, and one fellow board member of CCOM is amongst us, Tinka Žival, from Croatia, now working in Kosovo. And this is also, I think, an important aspect if we talk about the mistrust in media, the mistrust in political communication, not only supporting journalists to do their jobs in a better way, but also supporting communication professionals to do their job in a better way. And I think then, in the long run, I hope we can help in this field. Many thanks.